Thank you, Novus, and welcome to Pitch Day 2021. I wish we could all be together in person today, but we're going to have a great day. I wish you all the best of luck in your pitches. I'm sure you're going to crush it. But to get you in the right mind frame, I'm going to give you my 5 tips for entrepreneurs that summarizes a lot of what I've learned across my career journey. So first, to give you perhaps a little bit of context of that journey. First and more importantly, I'm a husband of 15 years. I'm a dad of 5 kids, a walker of 2 dogs, Chewbacca and Moose. I went to West Chicago High School. I graduated from the University of Illinois and down in Urbana Champaign with a material science engineering degree. And I started my career as a software engineer at a global consulting firm called Accenture in 1997. And in 2001, I started a company called Solstice. Solstice was a software engineering firm and worked hard over 15 years, scaled Solstice to about 450 people across Chicago, New York, and Buenos Aires, and sold it to a British company called St Ives in 2015. And then continued to grow the business for a couple more years, and then I became the CEO of the parent company, so the global CEO of St Ives in 2018, and then embarked on a strategy to essentially rebuild St Ives into what is Kin Carta today. Kin Carta is a $400 million publicly traded tech company with 1,600 global employees. We're a digital consulting firm. So other companies or big companies hire us to build software and use data to help them grow faster and operate smarter. We're also a socially responsible business, which means we focus not just on generating profits, but also on enabling people and protecting the planet. And our purpose is to build a world that works better for everyone. What you're going to hear a little bit today is about my leadership philosophy, and that's one of what's called servant leadership. I believe my job is to make other people great at their job, and that enabling the success of others ultimately enables the success of the whole. I also believe that business can and should be a force for good. And that's a responsibility that you all will have as entrepreneurs as you go into the workforce. So that's a little bit about my journey. And the 5 rules we're going to talk about today are right here. The first is that you are already entrepreneurs. And the first company that you need to think about building is you. We'll talk a bit more about what that means. We're going to talk about the 3 things that you can focus on right now to maximize the chances of success as an entrepreneur. And that's discipline, differentiation, and minimizing debt. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the 3 different types of capital that you need to start a business: career, social, and financial. We're going to talk about how important it is to ask other people for help along your journey. And then we're going to talk about what it means to be a multiplier. So let's dig in. First, your career is your first company. And what does that mean? It means that your career, the job that you ultimately get out of school, is actually your safety net. It's your backstop. I started my career as a software engineer. And as I went along my journey, I was able to take risks, which every entrepreneur must do, because I knew that if all else failed, I could get a good job working as a software engineer and support myself and my family. So although today is about entrepreneurship and exploring the what if, one of the themes that I'm going to keep coming back to is that your career is the foundation of your entrepreneurship journey. I've met many people in my life who jumped into entrepreneurship without building a career first. And I will tell you, none of them have been successful. Yes, we hear stories about kids building apps in college and dropping out and going on to be billionaires, but this is not normal. This is the equivalent of winning the lottery or being one of the 5 starters on the Chicago Bulls. This can't be your plan. But what I can tell you, by focusing on your career first, you will inevitably increase your chances of being a successful entrepreneur. And we're going to talk about how that works today. So when you think about what you're going to major in, and ultimately your first job, what your first job is going to be, this is a really helpful diagram. And ironically, it's the same Venn diagram that you can use when you start your first company. What do you want to do? What are you good at doing? And what will the market pay you for? You want to be at the intersection of those three things. I could spend 30 minutes just talking about this, but it's meant to be simple, and it is. But having two of the three of these things is not going to make you happy. In order for you to be happy, you're going to have to figure out how to find a career that's in the center of the three of these things. Now, I don't want you to be stressed out about this, because particularly when you're going on to pick your major in college, because let's be honest, it's going to be an educated guess. But you do want to make sure that you're picking a major that you believe you'll enjoy, that you think you'll be good at, and most importantly, that will give you a good job when you graduate. Now, what a good job means is up to you. But if money is something that's important to you, then you want to go into a major that's going to help you find a job that will allow you to make money. And if you want to ultimately start your own business, then you're probably going to have to find a major that will get you a good paying job, because starting a business takes money or capital. More on that in a second. Now, this sounds simple, but you would be surprised how many people get this wrong. You would be surprised how many people wish they could rewind the clock to be in your shoes right now, to be able to map out their future differently, considering these three things. So don't pick a major willy-nilly. Be super intentional about it. Find your center on this diagram. All right, next rule, the three things to focus on right now. Listen, being an entrepreneur is risky. 20% of businesses fail in the first year, 50% fail after 5 years, and 70% fail after 10 years. If your goal is to become an entrepreneur, and since we want to think about your first business as being your career, then there are some specific things you can do right now to give you the best chance of success. And I'm going to categorize them into these three categories: discipline, differentiation, and minimizing debt. First, discipline. Entrepreneurship takes discipline. You must be very focused on spending your time on the tasks that have the best chance of making your business successful. And if your business is you, then the best return on your time right now will be focusing on your grades and your AP or advanced placement or dual college credit classes. Full stop. The first 3 years of your grades in high school will have a significant weighting on what college you can get into. And the better college you graduate from, the more that's going to carry some level of credibility when you go to get your first job or start your first company. Remember, many new businesses require outside investment, and investors will be interested in what school you went to, amongst other things. But your grades in high school will be incredibly important to help you get into the right school. I know that probably goes without being said, but it needs to be said. Priority one. Also, if your high school offers AP or dual college credit classes, those classes are gold. They're the best investment you can make right now, and I'll tell you why. The more college credits that you can bank up in high school, the less credits you're going to have to take in college, and that's going to save you money. For example, the cost of taking one 3-hour credit class at Northwestern is roughly $11,000. How much does that AP class cost in high school? Nothing. It's free. That's an unbelievable return on investment on your time. And as an entrepreneur, this is something you always want to look for. What's the best return you can get on your time? Also, the more AP credit or dual credit classes you have coming in to your freshman year of college, the more likely that you're going to be able to graduate in 4 years and also be able to take all the classes and all the things you have to and all the things you want to. And that's going to make you a more well-rounded entrepreneur. I came into college with roughly 12 hours of AP credit, and I majored in material science engineering, but halfway through, I knew I wanted to go into software. So I was able to take some computer science classes, which helped me get my first job at Accenture as a software engineer. I also took acting classes because I enjoyed it. I wanted to learn to be a strong communicator. I was able to make these pivots and still graduate in 4 years because of the AP classes I took in high school. So the discipline of getting good grades And maximizing AP or dual college credit classes is the best investment you can make as a future entrepreneur right now. Let's talk about differentiation. When you're an entrepreneur, differentiating your business from its competitors is key. You need to think of yourself the same way. What can you do to differentiate yourself from everyone else trying to get into that school you want to go to, or ultimately for that first job out of college? You know that extracurricular activities are important, but don't just sign up for stuff. Find opportunities to help lead, whether it's a club or a sport or a job. It really doesn't matter as long as you can demonstrate growth and leadership. Also, what you're doing here today, being a part of Novus, pitching an aspirational business idea, that's a great differentiator. If you took this a step further and turned it into a side hustle, that is starting a business on the side while you pursue your main career, which is getting good grades and teeing yourself up to get into a good college, a side hustle is another great differentiator. I started a lawn mowing business in high school. I actually made decent money. I built up a big client base. I learned a ton about business. But don't let your side hustle blow up your main hustle. You need to keep it in perspective. If you pour everything into the side hustle and blow your grades or don't take as challenging a classes, it's not going to help you in the long run. One of the first interns I ever hired at Solstice had created a product that were earmuffs with slots to insert hand warmers. She built the product and she sold a few of them. The business didn't end up succeeding, but she learned a ton and it really made her stand out. It was a great differentiator for her. But I probably wouldn't have hired her if she didn't go to the University of Iowa and have solid grades and have all the other tools that she needed to be successful. So going after the side hustle is great. Just don't let it jeopardize your main company, your career. Let's talk about debt. Now, only 25% of parents pay 100% of their kids' college costs. If you are lucky enough to have one of these parents, go home, give them a hug, and tell them thank you. You are blessed, and so are they. For the rest of us, for the majority of people out there, you're going to have to pay for your college education to some degree, and you're most likely going to have to use debt or student loans to do it. And as an entrepreneur, you need to be very stringent about how much debt you take on. Taking on debt to fund a business, in this case yourself, is not a bad thing, but too much debt kills a business. In fact, it's the number one reason why businesses go under. They acquire too much debt and they can't pay their bills. So you want to minimize the amount of debt you have to take on. How do you minimize debt? Minimize tuition through either starting at a community college or maximizing student aid and scholarships, and of course, by working. Whatever you do, when you compare the different colleges you get into, make sure you're looking at how much it's going to cost you and how much debt you might need to take on as a primary consideration. You're much better off going to a good state school while taking on minimal debt than going to a very expensive private school and amassing hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Here's another way to think about it. If you have a lot of student loan debt, it's going to be tough for you to take a chance later to stop working and start your own business. If that's your goal, because if you have that debt to serve, you're going to need to keep working to serve it. So minimize your debt. So the three things I want you to focus on for the rest of your high school career are discipline, grades, and AP classes, differentiation through side hustles or taking leadership roles in extracurricular, and minimizing debt when you pick your college. By focusing on these things right now, they will train you to be the entrepreneur you want to be. Okay, next rule. You need three types of capital to start a successful business: career, social, and financial. Starting a business takes capital. And all three of these are very important. Career capital is probably the most important. The more knowledge you can build up as you build a successful career, the more opportunities you're going to see in the market to start a business, and the more credibility you will build with future investors in your business. I started my career at Accenture, which was a large global technology firm. And I did well there. I got good performance reviews. I was promoted after working for just 18 months. I thought I had it all figured out. But what I didn't tell you about me earlier in my bio slide is after I left Accenture and before I started Solstice, I started another company called EC Team. And EC Team was an epic failure. EC team went out of business after just 18 months. I did everything wrong. Bad business plan, bad clients, bad business partners, bad everything. And after EC team failed, I started Solstice and I took everything I learned and I was very conservative with how I built that firm. It was eventually a success, but it took 10 years to get it to scale and it took 15 years before I was able to sell it. And I don't have any regrets about my journey. But when people ask me what I would have done differently, I tell them I would have stayed at my first job out of college for longer. I would have gotten experience as an executive and learned not just how to be an engineer, but learn how the business I was working for actually worked. Instead, I had to figure all that out on my own. And if I had built more career equity, I would have gotten to where I ended up wanting to get to much faster and with much less risk. So figuring out what that first job is and getting in there and figuring out how that business works and what makes it successful is one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself. Okay, second, social capital. Social capital is also very important. Social capital is essentially who you know, your network. And your network is one of the most powerful tools that you can develop in business. Who is your network today? It's your friends. It's your family. It's your neighbors. It's your teachers and the people you work for, maybe in whatever job you might have. Is that network valuable? Maybe. But the people you choose to surround yourself with going forward will ultimately have a big impact on your entrepreneurship journey and your chances of success. Let's go back to what we talked about earlier. Why is it important to get good grades and get into a good school? Is it because the curriculum and the classes they teach to undergraduates has more up-to-date information in a good school versus a not so good school? Not really. Actually, it's probably the same curriculum for the most part. A big reason you want to go to a good school is you will inevitably be surrounded by other smart people that are hard workers and destined to do well. If you start to build a very powerful you'll start to build a very powerful network early on in your career. I went to the University of Illinois. It was a great state school. And some of the people that I met at school are leaders now at Kin Carta today. I work with them side by side every day. Others became clients of mine. Others stood up in my wedding and are some of my closest friends. When I started my career at Accenture, some of the people I worked with there 20 plus years ago are leaders at Kin Carta today. Others have become clients. Others stood up in my wedding and some of my closest friends. Social capital, this network that you build, incredibly important. But it's a two-way street. You have to give more than you take from it. More on that later. But you've got to be really deliberate about who you surround yourself with. We talked earlier about the best route for you to avoid debt, maybe to go to a community college for a year or two. And if you go down that path, who should you surround yourself with at that community college? The people that are there because they're aimless and not sure what they want to do with their lives, or the people that are there for the same reason you are, to save money and work hard and get into the best university that they can? Which types of individuals would be more powerful additions to your network? I'll take that kid who put themselves through school any day. That kid has grit. That kid has fire. That kid has got what it takes to be an entrepreneur. All right, third, financial capital. This is the last piece. Financial capital means money. If you want to start a business someday, you're going to need money. And as much as it seems it might be easy to get investors, I'm here to tell you it's not. Because investors don't give money to good ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen. They want to see some proof that your business idea is actually going to work. And you're going to have some skin in the game, and you're going to have some money in the bank in order to give yourself some runway to get a business moving and show that it can work. This goes back to everything we talked about earlier. Getting a good job out of college that pays well so you can start saving up, minimizing student loan debt, staying away from credit cards and high interest loans, and always living below your means. Entrepreneurship does not start as a jet-setting lifestyle, traveling first class and eating at fancy restaurants. It starts with ramen noodles and riding the subway. When I started Solstice, I was living with 6 guys in a 4-bedroom apartment above a Chinese restaurant in Old Town. We joked that we all walked around smelling like chop suey every day, because we did. Our clothes reeked of it. But ironically, those were also some of my best and most rewarding days of my life. That's because money doesn't buy happiness, growing does. And so if you want to build a business someday, stop spending and start saving. Okay, next rule. Asking other people for help is a gift for you and for them. 8 years ago at a networking event, I was asked who was on my advisory board at Solstice. I didn't have an advisory board. I joked, who'd want to be on the advisory board of a small technology company like Solstice? We were like 40, 50 people at the time. Their response changed my life. They said, write down 4 people, whether you know them or not, that you would love to have on your advisory board, and call them up and just ask them, see what they have to say. You got nothing to lose. So I did. I wrote down 4 of the most successful people I knew of in the professional services sector. Individuals that have built up companies and took them public, individuals that scale businesses across offices all over the world, individuals that have been CEOs of the world's largest publicly traded companies. I asked these 4 people that I barely knew to spend a day every quarter with us, teaching us what they had learned. And to my surprise, they all said yes. Not long after forming that advisory board, thanks to no small part to their guidance, our firm doubled in size, and not long after that, it was purchased by Kin Carta, St Ives at the time. Years later, I asked those people why they agreed to spend so much time on a fledgling company like Solstice, and they all gave me the same answer. They're looking for an opportunity to get back, to give another team the knowledge they had gained over the course of their careers, to pay forward what they had learned from their advisors. So asking for help is a bi-directional gift, not only to yourself, but to those you ask. Asking for help gives someone else an opportunity to shape the world by sharing their experience with you. So in hindsight, the reason I didn't have an advisory board was because I was actually too proud to ask for help. I wanted to think I had all the answers, but in reality, I knew a fraction of what I had to learn. But by putting aside ego and being vulnerable enough to ask for help, I was ultimately able to provide more opportunities to more people. So don't let pride get in the way. Think about building your own personal advisory board as you go through your career journey. Don't ever hesitate to ask for someone's time to give you advice on what direction you should go or provide feedback on decisions you're trying to make. Start thinking about that personal advisory board now as you work towards finding the center of that Venn diagram we talked about. And if someone's advice helps you succeed, don't forget to circle back and tell them thanks. It's one of the best gifts you can give someone. Okay, our last rule. This last rule is one of the most important lessons you can learn as you start your entrepreneurship journey. In addition to figuring out where your place is in the center of that Venn diagram, in addition to being disciplined and differentiated and maniacal about managing your debt, in addition to building up your social career and financial capital, in addition to building your own personal advisory board for your career journey, you have a very important choice to make. What type of person are you going to be? How are you going to treat people? When you think about all the people you will inevitably meet over the next 50 years of your career, how do you want them to remember you? One of the best books that I've ever read was called Give and Take. It was written by Adam Grant. And Adam Grant is a workplace psychologist. And he studied thousands of people in the workplace, and he found some interesting themes. He divided people up into 3 categories: givers, takers, and matchers. Givers were always looking for ways to help other people. They put other people's needs and success in front of their own. They were constantly looking for ways to help others improve. Takers were the opposite. They were always looking for how they could use other people to get a leg up. They would manipulate and undermine and do whatever they had to do to get ahead in organizations. And matchers were actually the majority. Sometimes they'd give, sometimes they would take. They just liked everything to be fair, everything to be even. So in Adam Grant's study, who do you think the lowest performers were in his study? It was the givers. The givers would get walked over by the takers and the matchers, and they would focus too much on others and not prioritize their own needs and aspirations. But who do you think the highest performers were? The most successful people in his study? Interestingly, it was the givers again. But this was a different type of giver that Adam referred to as multipliers. Multipliers don't let themselves get taken advantage of by takers, but they are first and foremost givers. They're always looking to level up other people as they leveled up themselves. They didn't just try to get ahead, they tried to get everybody ahead. They brought people with them. They realized that success is achieved by enabling the success of others. They were servant leaders. Because ultimately, if you're looking to get to the top, you can't do it alone. Multipliers are successful because people want to see them succeed. The most successful entrepreneurs I know are not ruthless, conniving, backstabbing types that you see in Hollywood movies. They're some of the most caring and considerate people I know. They're successful because people want to work with them, because they know that they'll do everything to help them be successful, whether they're customers or employees. High school can be a tough time. I had a tough time in high school. Part of the reason I had such a hard time was because I was worried too much about what other people thought of me. You can't be a multiplier if you're worried about what other people think about you, because that means you're thinking about you. The switch flipped for me when I was in college, and I stopped caring about what people thought, and I started caring about how people felt. Whether someone was working for me or against me, I always asked myself that question. What are they feeling right now? How are they feeling right now? If I can determine that, I can almost always help them. And if they know I'm here to help them, then they're more likely to help me. And we're more likely to find a way to win together. That's what being a multiplier is all about. So we talked through a lot today, but for me, it all boils down to these 5 things. Remember, your career is your first business. Be intentional about where you go from here. Don't just let it happen. Make it happen. Focus on your grades and bank as many AP and dual college credit classes as you can. This is going to give you a leg up in your entrepreneurship journey, wherever that might lead. Don't be afraid to experiment with side hustles, but don't let them distract you from building your foundation. And take control of your financial future now. Minimize student debt by doing the work to get the student aid available. Minimize the loans that you need to take out. You don't want a bigger debt burden than is necessary. Be intentional about building your career, your network, and saving money. You need all 3 of these things to start a business. And don't ever be afraid to ask people for help. There's no reason to take a wrong turn if somebody else knows the directions. And everybody loves giving directions. It makes people happy when they can help other people get to where they want to go. And remember to take other people with you on your journey. Always look for opportunities to help others. Realize that you will ultimately find success in enabling the success of others. Enjoy the day today. It's a gift that you have given yourself. Let your passion come through in your pitch. Celebrate your team members. Connect with and learn from your judges. And most importantly, have fun. Thanks for listening.